I'm John Lordan, and welcome to the first episode of BrainScratch for 2024. Now, we have some changes happening with the schedule here on the channel. Please check out our 2024 channel changes video coming next Wednesday for more information on that. I hope you enjoyed your holiday season. While a lot of us, myself included, were traveling, visiting family, enjoying ourselves, law enforcement was at work, trying to help two families deal with heinous, unspeakable losses. A lot of the cases we talk about here are challenging, and the investigations don't always go as we hope. But sometimes, even for the tough cases, things just click. When I started looking into today's case, it was unsolved, but this week there's been a huge step forward. And even if the case doesn't need more help, which is debatable, I think if there's more information out there, law enforcement could certainly use it. I know that the two families you learn about today certainly can use more help. It's a case that will likely challenge some of your assumptions, maybe reaffirm others, but as always, is a huge reminder about how these losses affect so many people. And even for those of us who are quick to judge the choices of others, and I'll be honest, I struggled with that looking into this case as well. The outcome leaves us all questioning how the most innocent person in this case might not get justice in their name. Let's start this year off with a case where the pieces are seemingly coming together, an example of how law enforcement can go right, and hope this is an omen for the many other cases we'll look at together here throughout the year. 18-year-old Savanah Nicole Soto, known as Vanna by some, was the only girl in her group of 8 siblings, and she aspired to be a nurse. She was previously working at a senior living center taking care of the elderly, but recently stopped work there to carry out another of her dreams, having a baby with her 22-year-old boyfriend, Matthew Guerra. Some members of her family weren't thrilled with him being 4 years older than she was, but the couple stayed together and worked at their relationship, going through some very difficult challenge in doing so. Now it was December 2023. She was a week overdue, and her induced labor appointment was scheduled for Saturday, December 23rd at 6:30 p.m. Her family says she was excited. Her bag was packed for her hospital stay. She even got her nails done. Both families were ready to celebrate Christmas with a new family member. There were gifts ready under the tree for the newborn, Fabian. But before she could get to that appointment, Savanah and Matthew disappeared. Let's start at Wikipedia and learn about where this takes place. Leon Valley, Texas is a city in Bexar County. It's on the northwestern side of San Antonio, and its population was around 11,500 as of the 2020 census. It was originally developed in the 1940s as a farming community, and this is a little bit of an interesting fact because it kind of comes into play a little bit with the situation here. In 1952, residents filed a petition for incorporation as an independent city, since the residents didn't wish to be annexed by San Antonio. So Leon Valley was incorporated in 1954, and its growth, you could see, it was pretty rapid. In 1960, it had a population of just over 500. By 1970, that was just about 2,000. And by 1990, it had almost hit 10,000 people. So very quick growth there. And just an interesting development because of that choice. Essentially, it means that there's a bit of a separation between San Antonio law enforcement and Leon Valley law enforcement. And this case starts as a missing persons case, and we know that those jurisdictional lines always become a factor in that. What's interesting about this is just Leon Valley is so close. I mean, literally, you're a few miles away before you're in San Antonio, or at least parts of the San Antonio metropolitan area that are serviced by SAPD. So let's keep that in mind as we get into the details here. Over at sportskeedia.com, where was Savanah Soto last seen? Family issues plea for help in wake of pregnant teen's disappearance. Keep in mind, this is the weekend leading right into the holidays. So a lot of concern there, and a special weekend on top of that, since she was supposed to be giving birth to baby Fabian. The family of pregnant teen Savanah Soto is desperately trying to find the 18-year-old who reportedly disappeared alongside her boyfriend, Matthew Guerra, on December 22nd, 2023. Concerns were raised after Savanah, who was scheduled for induced labor over the weekend, failed to meet up with her grandmother at the hospital. And here we have a photo of them with a social media post from a neighbor noting a bit of a strange condition. Neighbors heard them arguing last night. If anybody knows Matthew Guerra, please let us know where he is at. So we can tell very quickly that we have some speculation about, missing woman goes pregnant. Her boyfriend is also missing. Where is she? Quite honestly, it's a story that I think we've all heard many times that has one particular outcome, that the boyfriend, the husband in some cases, is actually the suspect. And it looks like, not only from a social media perspective, I mean, yes, this message is coming in from social media, but we've got neighbors that are kind of alluding to that fact with maybe, something that they heard the night before as well. Also interesting to note here, they're saying that she was actually noticed missing on December 22nd. So that would be Friday. According to that note, if there was arguing the previous night, that would roll it back to the evening of December 21st. Let's continue with the article. Multiple search organizations took to social media in an effort to generate leads. They revealed that Savanah Soto was last seen by neighbors getting into her car with her boyfriend. And they're saying that was on December 22nd, 2023. Now, that's what's being reported at this time. I can tell you guys, there's a lot of conflicting information that I've bumped into as we go through this case. And this is a pretty rare instance in terms of BrainScratch where we're going to get some answers. So I'm going to leave a big question mark on that December 22nd for you guys intentionally. Just know that that's a bit of a questionable fact there. I think we're going to run into information that certainly supports that they could have been arguing. The last time frame of them being seen, I'm kind of not sure about. Online posts from search organizations and concerned citizens also revealed that neighbors heard the couple arguing before they got into their car. In a Facebook post, Savanah Soto's grandmother, Rachel Soto, said, "My granddaughter Savanah Soto is missing. She was supposed to be in the hospital right now trying to have her baby boy, but instead, we're all hoping and praying for a safe return. She's with her boyfriend, Matthew Guerra, nowhere to be found, and not in the hospital where she's supposed to have her baby boy." Savanah Soto's mother, Gloria Cordova, said that her daughter was believed to be with her boyfriend, Matthew, and she insinuated that he was dangerous. In a quote from her, "I'm worried about her safety. She is with her boyfriend, who is no good. Prayer for my baby girl." Continuing, Matthew Guerra's mother, Karen Hernandez, took to Facebook in defense of her son, saying that he would never harm his girlfriend. We've got a full post from her here. Let's just go through this. "If anyone knows my son, Matthew, he and his pregnant girlfriend are missing. I know my son, and he wouldn't do anything to hurt her. She is due to have his baby. Her things were left behind that she packed for hospital, including her purse." The neighbors said they heard Savanah screaming for help, and the next morning they said they saw them get into Cadillac. This is just the trick when it comes to the social media information and trying to stitch that together. I don't believe that a Cadillac is part of this story rolling forward, but my son's phone says the caller is unavailable and their car is not at their apartment. As a mother, I know my son and his girlfriend were taken against their will because my son does what he does for money. He's not an abusive boyfriend. It's envy and those who hate on others and don't need anyone. That has something to do with my son and his girlfriend missing. Please help if anyone knows anything. Let me and his brothers know. Thank you. So even in this message, there seems to be some understanding. She's not being exactly upfront about what he does, but she's saying that he does what he does for money and he's not an abusive boyfriend. Let's go ahead and continue with the next article here. Continuing with the Daily News. Soto's family said they first requested a welfare check last Friday night. Local cops said responding officers found no signs of forced entry at her house and dismissed the concern. Police in Leon Valley, the northwest suburb where Soto lived, said they heard the couple was out of town. So on Monday, which would be Christmas Day, cops issue an alert that's typically used for missing or abducted adults. What is that alert? It's called a clear. And according to the Texas Department of Public Safety, a clear alert is a coordinated law enforcement adult rescue. And that system was created in 2019. It was created to fill the gap between missing children, which is the Amber Alert, and the senior citizens, which is a Silver Alert. A clear alert helps law enforcement find missing, kidnapped, or abducted adults, or those who are in immediate danger of injury or death. And I believe they were able to get to this condition in this particular case because they knew that she was already past her due date. She was scheduled to have that procedure for her to have her baby. So that raised the medical need that, if she missed that appointment, there was some medical emergency that was happening for either her or her baby. So they did issue the clear alert. But remember that thing I talked about when it came to the jurisdictions? In one of the interviews that I watched from the police chief from the San Antonio PD, he's very clear that I didn't mean for that to be a pun, that the clear alert went out in that particular area. It didn't necessarily hit the whole San Antonio area. It basically hit Leon Valley's area in terms of the alert. And in terms of a missing persons case, yeah, of course, we want the most coverage that can happen. Interviews I saw from her family, in those, they were told that there would be some type of coordination between these different police agencies. There's also the county agency, Bexar County agency, that there would be some type of notification that went across those. The only thing that I know that happened around that was SAPD did acknowledge that they had received some information about the alert. They kind of took just a standard police report about that. They didn't issue their own missing persons alert. So that's where that jurisdiction kind of comes into play a little bit in terms of delaying the missing persons investigation. I don't think it really had a tremendous impact on this. It's just, I always look at those situations with this kind of question in my mind about like, is this working how this should? Is there a better way for this type of thing to work? Let's continue at news4sanantonio.com. Family begs for information. Family and friends gathered at the last place she was seen before going missing. They drove around a nearby area looking for any sign of her. There isn't a dry eye at Soto's Northwest Side apartment complex. Several people were overcome with emotion while talking about her. It's a Merry Christmas, but it's not too merry for us, Savannah's grandmother, Rachel, said. We love her, we miss her, whatever's going on, let her come home so we can have a Merry Christmas with her. Her mother also commented in this article, I just need to know that she's okay. I just want her home. I'm worried about the baby, if she's even had the baby. Cordova says that she believes her daughter is in trouble. She says there's no reason why she would just get up and go off and do that. Basically, they asked, would she just leave of her own accord? And her mother is saying, like, no, there's no way that happened. And her mother's saying that Savannah especially wouldn't do that in light of a loss that their family experienced in 2022, the death of her 15-year-old brother, Ethan. She knows what I went through with Ethan, and I know she wouldn't want me to go through this again. Leon Valley Police are asking to keep your eyes open for a silver 2013 Kia Optima. So that is the car that we're actually looking for. That is, I've seen it reported both ways. It's either Matthew's or it's Savannah's car. But that's the car that is missing. I don't know where that Cadillac came from. But here's a picture of Savannah. You can see she's clearly pregnant. This is her mother with her, and they're holding a shirt with her deceased 15-year-old brother, Ethan, on it as well. Unfortunately, we get the news the following day. It would be on Tuesday, December 26th, that the discovery would be made, and made in a terrible, terrible way. Horror scene. Pregnant teen Savanah Nicole Soto was found shot dead in car front seat with boyfriend's body in back after Facebook tip. We've looked into a lot of cases together. I have heard of some less than desirable situations when it comes to family members being found in situations like this, but nothing quite like this. And it really has me wondering, why did this Facebook tip come into a family member? But that is what happened. Her sister-in-law, Joni Wazzle, claimed she received a tip on Facebook about her whereabouts. Wazzle told KSAT she received a message on Facebook in which someone said they saw a Kia Optima believed to belong to Guerra in a parking lot about 3 miles away from Soto's apartment. After receiving the tip, Wazzle claimed she and her family traveled to the parking lot. She said that when they arrived, she saw Soto and Guerra in the vehicle. She also claimed that they appeared to be dead and shot. Wazzle went on to say that after she saw the 18-year-old's face, she didn't want to see anymore. According to Wazzle, Soto was seated in the front passenger seat while Guerra was in the back of the vehicle. Police have yet to publicly confirm the identities. That's as of when this article came out. But they did also confirm that an unborn child was pronounced dead at the scene as well. So pretty clear that we know it's them. Interesting question in terms of why is there taking some type of delay to confirm the identities. It just has me worried about the type of wounds that we're talking about here. We are talking about 2 gunshot wounds. Was there possibly more that was done to them around that? Is certainly a question. But let's take a quick look at what the police chief said at one of his conferences about the complexity of this case. He was very honest very soon about maybe this case wasn't as cut and dry or as easy to assume the outcome of as a lot of people that were watching this, all of us out here in the public reading the articles initially came to.
It was a very, very perplexing crime scene. And detectives right now are looking at this as a possible murder. But we don't know for sure.
So at that point, what the police chief is kind of alluding to a little bit, and the media was certainly pushing around in terms of their coverage on the case, there was still a question of who did this? She's in the front seat of the car. She's in the passenger seat. He's in the back seat of the car. They've both been shot in the head. It's possible that Matthew might be responsible for this, that he might actually be the culprit, which was something that kind of stayed in the view of this case for quite a bit. But of course, we also have family members talking about this. Let's take a look and get a comment from the grandmother, Rachel.
My heart is broken right now. And nothing's ever going to replace her. She was a good girl. She loved sports. She played basketball with her brothers. But she was a heart. She was beautiful inside and out.
So we have the situation that no family ever wants to be in, with the worst outcome, the outcome that none of us ever want to face. And I've heard Matthew's father speak about this quite a bit, just about the sense of loss he's experiencing. And he's very honest about it. He says, look, that thing that you hear about the depths of pain, and it's something that no parent should ever feel. He's like, I get that now. I didn't really know what that meant until now. I think it's just truly something that the rest of us can't fathom unless you've experienced it yourself. But we have the discovery. We have a question now of who is actually responsible for doing this. Where was the car discovered? Can we learn more about the scene? Let's go ahead and continue with the coverage here. Family members confirmed to KSAT that Savanah Soto, 18, was found inside her car in the 5900 block of Danny K, along with an adult male. The Bexar County Medical Examiner's Office positively identified the man as Soto's boyfriend, Matthew. The ME's office positively identified Soto as the other body. That happened a day or two later, which once again just kind of raises that question about what state were the bodies in. Her cause of death was a gunshot wound to the head, and her manner of death was reported as homicide. So very quickly, they were clear about the fact that it seemed like she was certainly killed by somebody else. They didn't release that manner of death for Matthew initially. We will eventually get to a manner of death for that being released, but they kind of left that off the boards for a long time, which of course brought that speculation about could he be the one responsible for this back around in terms of the media coverage, and I'm sure social media and comments were going nuts with that as well. Just to do a quick look at the maps here. So I've seen a couple of different addresses But basically around this area where we've got this 6,000 Grissom Road is where they were living. The car is actually found up at this area called Colinas at Medical Apartments. Now in the news coverage, they kind of say 5900 Danny K Drive, but in some of the photos we're going to see it's clear that the car was actually parked in the apartment complex, within the apartment's parking. And what's interesting about that is just how long could a car sit there and not be noticed, particularly with some of the conditions we're going to see. The car wasn't parked exactly straight. Here's a shot of it. I know it's kind of hard to tell from this particular angle, but if you take a look at the lines up here for the parking spaces, they're slanted. They're slanted a little bit kind of to the up and to the right. And we can see the car is basically opposite of that. It's pointing down to the right there. So it's probably crossed between two spaces, or it's really sloppy, like at the end of a space. It's just interesting to me that a car would sit there for a matter of days before being noticed. And then outside of that, I don't understand why that Facebook tip goes to a family member. I mean, I get that not everyone wants to pick up the phone and call law enforcement. It's actually kind of something I deal with pretty regularly in terms of my work, but I get that they don't want to do that. But law enforcement nowadays has a Facebook presence. They could have absolutely sent that tip directly into them. It really wrecks me to think of there's a family that drove out there, went and found this car and made that discovery when it could have been sent to law enforcement. Law enforcement could get out there and actually make that discovery themselves. But there is also a medical center here. Initially, I was wondering, like, were they on the way to the hospital? Like, yeah, I know they had an appointment for induced labor. Maybe it was not going to wait for that. Maybe the baby was coming. There is a Methodist hospital that is right up here, but later coverage that I found said it is a Methodist hospital, but it's a different one that is further out. It's about 15, almost 20 miles, a bit further north and east of this area that she had the appointment at. So it does not seem like they were headed to the hospital. SAPD Chief McManus also said that the Kia Optima is believed to belong to Matthew. He said that investigators have not yet been able to move the bodies and they're not sure whether a weapon is in the car. And he also said that the bodies are believed to have been there for 3 or 4 days, which certainly lines up with the time frame of the missing persons profile around this case as well. Continuing at the messenger.com, what about this area? Is this known to be an area where things like this can happen? A nearby resident compared the apartment complex where Soto was found to Hotel California, saying everything happens here. It's evil here. The resident, who only identified herself as Natalie, told the messenger, "This is going to sound cold, but this doesn't surprise me." Now, interestingly, we know that early on in the investigation, they haven't even removed the bodies. They don't know if the gun is in the car. And of course, that would be a huge question in terms of, did Matthew do this or not? I mean, if they don't find a gun in there, probably not him. Yes, there's the possibility that it could have been him, but then someone came along after the fact and took the gun. No gun or cell phone found in car. The family of Savanah Nicole Soto's boyfriend does not believe that he killed the pregnant Texas teen, as it was revealed that no firearms or cell phones were discovered in the car. Of course, that's what's being reported by the New York Post at the time. It seems that there is actually one cell phone still found in the car. Matthew's phone not found in the car. Gabriel, who is Matthew's father, insisted that his child was not responsible for the couple's deaths. They were inseparable. Was it a perfect relationship? No, but she definitely was not a prisoner there. He pointed to presents under the Christmas tree. Those are Savannah's and Matthew's and baby Fabian's. Soto's brother, Jordan Corona, told CBS News that police told him that both the pregnant teen and her boyfriend were shot in the back of the head. Now, we got to keep this just in context. We've already got, this is the New York Post. It's been reported by a different news source, which was CBS News, and Jordan Corona told them that, but he was told that from police. So we just got to keep that in mind with some of these facts, just how many hoops they're going through before we hear them. And the validity of that might be questioned a little bit. We can confirm, I think at this point, I've seen in enough articles that they have confirmed Savanah, certainly a gunshot wound to the head. Of course, I've done the research on this. I know that he is also shot in the head. There's an important distinction between the two, which we'll touch on. But let's continue. Soto had been in the front passenger seat with a child carrier on her lap and her boyfriend in the back. Why would she have had a child carrier on her lap is a big question that honestly I still don't know, especially looking at that map that we were looking at. I mean, could they have been headed to the hospital? It is still in the direction of the other hospital. I don't think it's the most direct route. I think the most direct route would have been maybe up on this street, or maybe even jumping down to the highway if you wanted to get there as fast as possible. But that is very strange to me. I guess it's possible that she had the car seat already in the car. Maybe it was, like she was getting ready for bringing the baby home and they had left the car seat in the car. And when someone else attacked them or got into the vehicle, they moved the car seat onto her, something along those lines. Another little interesting wrinkle in all of this is this next story that Gabriel tells us about when he realized that his son was missing. Once it was like the 2:30 p.m. mark, we started panicking, he said. I started calling, racing home, racing over there, calling police. He said that he raced to his son's apartment where he kicked in the door and he found a lit candle and the diaper bag that Soto planned to take with her to the appointment. So it sounds like they left the house. Either they left it in a rush or maybe they left it with the expectation that they weren't going to be gone for very long. I think it's kind of a little strange to leave a lit candle in the home like that. But if the diaper bag had been left as well, that she had literally planned on taking to the appointment, kind of leads me to believe that this wasn't a case of she was starting to have the baby and they were heading to the hospital. Someone intercepts them along the way. He says, that's when I saw Savanah's overnight bag for the hospital that she didn't take with her, and that threw me in even more of a panic. But the question I have about all this is, didn't we get a report from the police that they went and checked the place and said that there was no signs of forced entry? His father's saying he went and kicked in the door. Unless that happened after the welfare check, because he is saying it's 2:30. So maybe, possibly, I guess that could be 2:30 on Christmas Eve. It's not clear about what day that is. That's the only thing that would make sense. It has to be that he went after that. Gabriel said he knows about his son being arrested in 2022 for domestic abuse against Savanah. And he even suggested that the boyfriend stay in custody longer. So yes, there is a history where Matthew was physical with Savanah previously. Some of the information that I've seen on that, and I don't know if I can really rely on it, so I don't want to push into it too strongly. You've kind of got neighbors or you have family members saying what they witnessed. It seemed like it was a pretty bad situation. And considering that, we've got his dad basically saying, I suggest that you guys keep him locked up for longer. Seems to me like this was not a good situation. But his father said they had contacted each other on the phone and that was a violation. Unfortunately, it would have to be Savanah to say that and she wouldn't do it, so he was let out. And he told the outlet that domestic abuse charges were never filed again. From other information I saw, she actually put in a request to have the domestic abuse charges dropped against him. I believe this went down for an incident related to Christmas 2022. And it was a couple months later where she basically asked for the charges to be dropped. Gabriel said his son had a criminal history that included unlawful carry of a weapon, evading police, and an assault charge causing bodily injury. So definitely some scary things that we're seeing just in terms of this story already, and especially still having that question in our minds about, they've been very clear Savanah's cause of death was homicide. They haven't really come out with information on Matthew to say that his death was homicide. In June, a judge granted Matthew probation for the family violence case. The probation was set to expire in June of 2024, but a judge extended it to February of 2025 after he picked up additional unrelated charges, including, I think these are the charges his father mentioned, unlawful carrying of a weapon, evading arrest in a vehicle, and reckless driving. He didn't hang out with the best crowd, his father said, but he added that he believed the young man was going to change when he became a dad himself. These are some of those assumptions and strong feelings that I told you guys about at the start of this. And I just want to echo, I've personally seen, even with my own family, that having children does really change the direction for a lot of people. I think a lot of people sometimes get caught up in certain paths or with certain things that they think are very big and important to them. And then having a child just literally changes all of that. It changes their worldview. So I do believe in what he's saying here. And of course, you know, this kid is a troublemaker. Do I want him to straighten out? Yes, absolutely. You know, do I want him to not be able to commit crimes, to be held responsible for those? Yes, absolutely. Doesn't change any of that. But I also want people, I kind of still believe in the best in people, and I want everyone to have a chance to try to find that. And unfortunately, here we are talking about an instance where not one, not two, but 3 lives don't get that chance. Meanwhile, Soto's mother, Gloria Cordova, also said that she is seeking answers about the mysterious deaths. Why was she in front and why was he in back? Obviously, that says someone else was there. I think it had something to do with him and things he was doing, not my daughter. She was just there at the wrong time. They took an innocent girl that was going to be a mommy. They just took her life for nothing. So we've got kind of this silent part of this story happening. We have even his family, his mother alluding to, hey, there's things that he's doing. We know they're not the best. He does what he does because he needs the money. We've got his father saying, hey, I know that he wasn't on the best track yet, but I was talking to him. Things were going to straighten out. There's something around Matthew, certainly. And I can tell you early on with some of the social media stuff that I just don't want to lean into it too much. But there was, questions between the families of Matthew could be responsible. Even if he's not the one that did this, he could still be responsible because of the type of lifestyle that he was living in. So that's kind of the swirl that we find ourselves in with this case. Gabriel said his family is looking for answers. I and Matthew would have talks in the last 2-3 months about what kind of changes he wanted to make, what kind of dad he wanted to be, what kind of sports he wanted Fabian in. He was just excited. Once Savanah was pregnant, we had talked all the time, and to my knowledge, he never put his hands on her while she was pregnant. The Bexar County Medical Examiner's Office confirmed that his cause of death was a contact gunshot wound to the head. And once again, just for that clarification, her cause of death was just a gunshot wound to the head. They did not specify a contact gunshot wound like they did with his. And we're still not getting the official, was it a homicide or not with him? So in terms of that needle moving, at this point where the media was, there was still a very big question. Could Matthew be responsible for this? Except we've got that thing about the gun not being there. But outside of the possibility, and I just wanted to bring this up because it doesn't happen a whole lot, but I have literally heard about this happening in other cases. If a family member comes upon a scene where someone has ended their own life, it has been known that they will occasionally remove the weapon so it doesn't look like that's what actually happened. Is that what we have happening in this case? I could tell you at this point, no, but I want to mention it as a possibility for anyone that looks into these things and wants to try to understand them. Could that have been happening in this case at this point with the type of information that we're getting? Yeah, because we're getting information that, well, both bodies in the car, he's behind her. He's got a contact wound. They're not specifying that for her. They're noting she clearly didn't do it to herself, but the gun's missing. So that could have been a possibility in this case. And then sprinkle in this whole thing about the Facebook notification going to her family. I mean, why didn't the person contact his family on Facebook? Which I don't think would have been the right thing to do. Like I told you guys, it should have been contact law enforcement. But outside of that, why does the contact go to her family? Just kind of raises that question. Like, could a family member of his have found this, taken the gun, blah, 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 blah. That's not what happened. I just want to be extremely clear. But it has been known. It has been known to occur in other cases. Let's continue here. Karen Hernandez posted a tribute to her son. I was always a good mommy to my baby. I'm heartbroken, and no one will take the love I carry in my heart and soul for my pride and joy. I love you, Matthew. I love the baby you lost and the beautiful queen you loved. I only got to meet her the day of the baby shower, and now you all are gone. You were so happy. So for all of you, this is not fair. And even outside of, yes, we've got these things, these challenging conventions when it comes to Matthew and the life he's looking to lead. We all just got to remember that humans, we have a lot of sides to us. We are no one particular part of our personality. We're a combination of all of it. And I've seen pictures where this looks like a beautiful young couple, a caring young man. I've seen other social media pictures where it's like he looks like he's trying to look like some street thug, or like he's in a 90s rap video or something. The truth is that there's just a lot of sides to every one of us. A little bit of information here that I only mentioned because it was kind of being brought up as maybe a potential connection to this case. We do know that the Soto family lost Ethan at the age of 15. There was a little more information around that, where there was literally a brawl that happened in a courtroom with their family and the guy that took Ethan's life. So I'm just going to run this clip for you guys real quick. I don't really care about the audio too much, but Victor Rivas is the guy that supposedly killed Ethan. I don't think the trial has happened yet, so it's still alleged at this point. But what happened was, they're saying that 18-year-old Victor Rivas was charged with the killing of Ethan Soto, allegedly as revenge for a drug robbery. During the trial in October, members of the Soto family jumped across barriers in the courtroom to repeatedly assault Rivas, who reportedly made a gesture at them. So this was kind of being brought up in press. No one was really making a very direct connection, but everyone was bringing it up, I think, under the presumption that could this killing of Savanah have been revenge in some way? Because we have the killing of Ethan essentially being revenge, and it's for a drug deal. This drug deal, we're talking about a 15-year-old, Ethan Soto, stole about $60 worth of THC cartridges from a 17-year-old kid. And this 17-year-old staged a plan to have Ethan killed and executed that plan, allegedly. So that's what happened in that case. And that's just, once again, kind of pointing to this lifestyle, this imagery of this kind of gangland lifestyle. I don't know if it's particular to this area or not, but it seems like it just chews up people's lives. I wish there was some way to move away from it. And, I've been watching that type of thing for decades. I mean, even before I was doing this type of work, it's just been a thing. So in that instance, after the courtroom brawl, 2 men and 2 juveniles were charged with assault and for disrupting the court proceedings, Fox San Antonio reported. But thank you, Fox, for pointing this out. Police have made no indication that Ethan's death is in any way connected to Savanah's death. And even knowing what I know about the recent discoveries on this case, that doesn't seem to be a factor in it. Could that change in the future? Yeah. I mean, this case has not gone to trial, but family of Savanah Soto holds vigil to honor her life. And it's interesting. I don't know if this is really speaking to the situation between the families at this point, but they essentially have separate vigils. They have a vigil for the Soto family, and then they have there's a separate vigil for the Guerra family. About 100 people, Savanah Soto's family and friends, gathered for a vigil. The family released balloons to honor Soto and her unborn baby, Fabian, at Kenwood Park. Soto's grandmother, Rachel, and father released doves. We should be having a celebration of her and her baby for the new year, and we're not doing that. We're having a vigil instead, mourning for her and crying for her. It's not right. They set up a memorial with painted rocks and a tree, which is next to the tree that the family planted for her slain brother last year. It's a very tough thing for this family to be going through already, just with losing Ethan to this type of violence in 2022, and then facing this again so soon after. It's unbelievable. Then we get to a big break in terms of information. Video shows persons of interest. And we get back to, I don't know if this is the exact same parking lot, but boy, it looks a lot like the parking lot from the other photo we have. We've got kind of the slanted, the paint that's not so solid in terms of the parking spaces. We've got the wooden fence. Let's take a look at this video together. We see a Chevy pulling in, and then we see either Matthew or Savanah's car. The door opens. Looks like someone is speaking to someone in the Chevy. That person gets out, walks over. Looks like they're speaking to the person in the driver's seat, also looking in. Bit of a conversation that's going on here. Goes back, grabs something, which it looks like a towel or a rag possibly, from the back of the truck. For a brief second, the other person pops out. And then he goes back. I'm not sure if he had something in his hand when he went back or not. But then the vehicles continue. I think this is another one of those cases where you can look at how law enforcement was communicating with the public and say, we need to follow this as a model. We have the police chief who looks like he's a very tight-lipped person, but he does numerous interviews. He gives limited information. He doesn't let people go to those big, wild conclusions that they want to based on the limited information that they're getting. He kind of keeps everyone in the middle of the road, says, hey, look, I'm not going to confirm what you guys are saying. This is what I can tell you right now. They get to the point where they have critical information like this. We now have a vehicle, pretty good footage of it, release that to the public. I mean, this is just very good execution in terms of a case. This is how that type of communication should be happening. And we're not even done yet. And I think it's just a clear indicator maybe of why this case that I thought was going to be an unsolved case we were talking about today has a big step that's happened in it that we'll talk about here soon. But let's go ahead and continue. We have one person driving a dark colored Chevy Silverado. The other person driving Matthew's Kia Optima. In the video, it appears that the driver of the Kia hands an object to the driver of the pickup truck. What we believe right now, and of course, we've got Police Chief McManus talking again, is it was something to wipe the side of the car down with. We can't be 100% certain of that, but that's what we're studying in this video, and that's what we believe right now. Police said that the video was taken near where the bodies were found. So again, they're not giving us all the details. They're not saying when, but they're saying, yeah, it's close enough. And I think they could pretty much confirm that that's Matthew or Savanah's vehicle. McManus said detectives are combing through surveillance videos, social media, and cell phone records to piece together what led to the victims' deaths. That's another thing, just having this kind of timestamp of when the vehicle's going through there. Now they can go start searching other records, looking for other people's doorbell cams or security cams, see if they could trace the route of either of these vehicles to get more information. McManus said the medical examiner has not yet determined Matthew's manner of death. He said that police have not fully ruled out the possibility that Matthew could have still been the one to have done this, but that at this time, they don't believe that that was the case. Clearly, it was a heinous act. It was unspeakable, the tragedy of it, McManus said. Certainly is. The manner of death appears to be put to rest. Finally, we do get confirmation over at mysanantonio.com. Soto's death was ruled a homicide, and Matthew's death also determined to be a homicide, despite the fact that it was contact. That's pretty interesting to think about just in terms of what could have happened around that, especially with Matthew being someone that was known to carry, even when he wasn't supposed to, when he was on probation, found with a gun. So what could have happened? How did this go down exactly? San Antonio Police Chief McManus said at a press conference that both deaths are being investigated as capital murder. Capital murder. What is that? What is a capital murder in Texas? In Texas, capital murder is the most severe form of homicide involving specific aggravating circumstances that elevate it beyond a standard murder charge. Convictions for capital murder can result in life imprisonment without parole or the death penalty. So they're making a very clear distinction here at versus-texas.com. Capital murder versus murder in Texas. In Texas, the biggest difference between murder and capital murder can be summed up in 2 words: death penalty. So very, very serious charges for both people, I think, that are in that video, but in particular for one, it seems like the person that's driving that car probably responsible for these deaths. And we get to the big news. Father and son were involved in the alleged murders. Father and son. What the heck is happening here? 8 days after the bodies, let me just say that again. 8 days. That is some good police work. I know there's times where we're critical with law enforcement. I deal with a lot of families that don't get great experiences with law enforcement. For a case like this, that they said was perplexing, that they were having so much trouble understanding on the outset, 8 days after the bodies were found, a father and son have been arrested. Sergeant Washington Moscoso said the son, Christopher Preciado, 19 years old, is facing a capital murder charge, while the father, Ramon Preciado, 53 years old, is facing a charge of abuse of a corpse. Police allege that Christopher killed the couple just before midnight on December 21st, then called his father for help. So if we roll back to those earlier articles we were looking at, that information about seeing them getting into a Cadillac on December 22nd didn't happen. There's no way that could have happened. The information about them arguing on December 21st certainly could have happened, and might be some part in terms of understanding what exactly, where are they going? What are they doing out here? What's happening with this? Okay, we've got some type of argument that happens at their house. That's maybe a piece of that puzzle. Police say that the killings happened elsewhere, but the pair hid the car at the apartment complex. Moscoso said that a key piece of evidence that was collected was Soto's cell phone. So remember that clarification I made for you guys before? Despite all the press reporting that no cell phone was found in the car, they did actually find Savanah's cell phone in the car. They're saying that that helped detectives get a possible location of where the suspect's vehicle was located. Officers made their way to the residence, and when Ramon Preciado answered the door, Moscoso said that the man knew why the police were there. Both he and his son were at the home at the time, and they were brought in for interrogation. Moscoso added that based on what the 2 men said during that interrogation, there was enough information to get a warrant signed by a judge tonight. He also says there was a lot of misinformation out there online. And boy, looking into this case, I can tell you, misinformation, certainly. There was already a very strong predisposition, which honestly, when I started looking at this case, I kind of felt that way too. Uh-oh, here we go. Girl about to have a baby, doesn't make it there. Boyfriend's missing. We know how this plays out. This is not that case. This case is different. And that's why we have to remember to look at each of these things as individual occurrences. We can't treat it like the same episode of Law and Order that we've seen 20 times. This is reality. These things just don't shake out like a writer can imagine. Sometimes there's twists that we just can't anticipate. But on the social media front, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that I cut out of this video. Guys, I didn't know which way to turn with it. I was like, is this legit? Wait, they're saying an influencer might be involved. Oh, wait, there's this other person that has a doorbell cam. And oh, look, Savanah is in the back there and there's guys yelling in her doorway, but she doesn't look like she's upset. I mean, there's this weird thing that happens, I think, where people want to be helpful. And I appreciate that. Like hearing law enforcement complain about, oh my God, we got too many phone calls and you guys just sent us too many bad tips. Well, like, when you put the word out that you're looking for help, that's just part of the game. And if your case happens to go national, I don't think there's anything anyone could do to really mitigate that or help control that flow in a good way for law enforcement. I get that. I've heard enough of them talking about that situation with these really big, high profile cases in particular, Delphi just jumping to mind on that. So I get that challenge, but there's also a point where there's people that I don't think are really being helpful, but because they have something that maybe can get them some views. I've got a doorbell cam where I've, got one of the people whose life has been ended walking by. This might be the last video of them. Let me put that up. That's the kind of stuff where I'm just like, what is going on with this? But yeah, we even have Moscoso pointing out here, there was just a ton of misinformation online. He notes these two individuals, they were the only suspects we were looking for. There were a lot of names going around on the internet. They had nothing to do with this. Yeah, there was literally some couple that had wanted to fight them at some point months before. I'm sure that raised a bunch of different tips being called into police about, hey, look, there was this couple that was arguing with them. I get it. So how did that phone actually help? I wanted to dive into that more because the way it was phrased in the last article, I didn't really get it. This next thread, I think, is going to help us kind of pull that together. Surveillance video showed that just before midnight on December 21st, we had that Chevy Silverado pull up. A few minutes later, that Silverado drives off. A search in the suspect's vehicle seen in the surveillance footage led investigators to a home off of Charlie Chan where detectives were met by Ramon. So basically, finding Savanah's phone gave them an item that they took to their tech team. Their tech team, I don't know how they broke into her phone. Maybe it didn't have a password. I don't know. They somehow get into her phone, or they worked with, I'm seeing reference to Secret Service even helping on this case. That might be how they basically got the phone cracked. But from her phone, they determined that, oh, this phone traveled to this location previously. And that's the location they go and start looking at. And they're like, oh, hey, look, there's that Chevy that we were looking for. It's at this location. So obviously it was some form of location tracking. I don't know if it was as simple as once they had access to her phone, they checked her Google location history or something like that. But it wasn't the longer form that we usually hear of like, oh, they had to get warrants, so a judge had to sign off, the phone company had to provide records. Like that process takes way longer. And maybe that's another example of some excellent police work happening here. Like I saw some conversation threads where people were like, Secret Service, why would they be involved with this? And someone was replying to that, like, maybe someone just had a connection there. They called them up, asked for help. Who knows? But what a great step to get into that phone, to not have to, I'm assuming they somehow accessed information from that phone in a way where they were able to determine the path that phone had taken, and then it stopped at a location before all of a sudden driving over to that apartment complex. But now we have the guys in custody. We have them being interviewed. Can we get some more pieces to this puzzle and figure out what this really was? What went down here? Christopher told detectives that Matthew pointed a gun at him, and during a struggle, Savanah was shot. Christopher said another struggle took place that resulted in Matthew being shot in the head. Detectives said that Christopher's version of the events were inconsistent with the evidence collected from the scene and from the victim's vehicle, according to the police report. So, looks like we can't really put too much stock into what Christopher is saying there in terms of at least the act of shooting. Authorities said they're working to unveil the full extent of the crimes committed. Christopher and Ramon are both being held at the Bexar County Jail. Christopher's bail set at a combined $2 million, while Ramon is being held on a combined $600,000 bond. Now, maybe part of the story we can believe over at mysanantonio.com is that Matthew met up with Christopher to sell him marijuana. And apparently marijuana is still not legal for recreational use in Texas. Interestingly, I have a lot of friends in California, and I can tell you that, I had this expectation that once there would be recreational use of marijuana, that basically the dealers would all go away. And from what I hear from some of my friends, some have just rolled into businesses where they actually have storefronts now, but there's other people that still prefer their old dealer. And I thought it would drive things to a price point where you wouldn't be able to have those independent dealers anymore. It doesn't quite do that. So for anyone that's looking to make this an argument for, they should have recreational marijuana in Texas, doesn't really do it for me, at least, based on the limited experience I have with, talking to people that deal with that, old friends of mine back in California. But in this particular instance, it might have been a factor here. Christopher told police that Matthew met him at his residence to sell marijuana, and that's according to the affidavits. A detective with the San Antonio Police Department spoke with Matthew and with Savanah's family and learned that the boyfriend would sell drugs using his phone and Instagram, where he would post the products, according to the affidavits. I just want to say that seems so risky to me. I mean, there's one picture I've seen of him in particular where he's holding a stack of money and stuff like that. And I know that that's kind of an online flex that a lot of people do, but it just, I don't know, isn't it inviting some form of criminal element? Isn't it saying hey, look what I got? I mean, that's part of the mentality of flexing, right? Look what I got. I don't know. It's such a tricky thing. The family also told the detective that there were people that wanted to rob Matthew and that he had been shot at before. The affidavit does not specifically say if Christopher was trying to rob Matthew before he allegedly shot the couple. The affidavit also doesn't say if Christopher knew Matthew or Savanah before the night that they were shot. Matthew Guerra's body had drag marks on his back, and the detective said it appeared he was dragged into the back of the vehicle. Police only found bullet casings in the vehicle, but no gun. Something else that confirms that Matthew was not responsible for this, there was blood found on the outside of the vehicle that led police to believe that Matthew wasn't the one to harm Savanah with the firearm, ruling him out as the person who shot her. Police determined that Christopher allegedly shot Matthew Guerra and Savanah Soto with the intent to kill them. The shooting also resulted in the death of the unborn child, Fabian. The affidavits do not say who owned the gun used in the shooting. I still can't quite put the scene together in my mind, but for them talking about how they found blood outside of the car and that being able to rule out Matthew would make me think that maybe he was shot, maybe she was still in the car. He's outside of the vehicle trying to do this deal. The guy shoots him out there, goes and shoots her, but I didn't hear about there being any broken glass within the vehicle. As a matter of fact, one of the details said that the vehicle was locked. But if he did shoot Matthew outside of the vehicle, then Matthew's blood would be found outside of the vehicle, and that would throw a really big wrinkle in the whole thought of, oh, Matthew did this to himself. Of course, combine that with the fact that there's drag marks and he's found in the back of the car. And kind of in another unbelievable discovery here, the house that police were looking for, about a half mile away from where they found the car. So yeah, apparently Christopher's father didn't have to drive very far. That's another thing that some people might be wondering is, well, wait, if he went to that house to do a drug deal, could Christopher's father have been there? The detective on the case is saying his father was not there. That his detective is saying they are certain Christopher is the one that actually is pulling the trigger here. That his father was not at that location at that time, that basically Christopher called for him later. So maybe it's that his father doesn't normally stay at this place too often. Maybe his father doesn't live at that same location. I'm not sure. But law enforcement is very strong about the fact that his father didn't pull the trigger. His father did help him cover it up. And he's certainly facing some charges for that as well. And not just the charges that we talked about. Police initially charged Christopher Ray Preciado, 19, with capital murder, but then added abuse of a corpse and alter or destroy a human corpse. Once again, just has me wondering what else might have happened to those bodies, because remember, the identification took a little longer than I would kind of expect in a case like this. His father, Ramon Preciado, had a charge of alter or destroy a human corpse added on after initially facing an abuse of a corpse charge for helping his son move the bodies after the murders. And I did hear a reporter was trying to get clarification on the movement of the bodies. That doesn't necessarily mean that the father helped physically move the bodies from, like into the car or out of the car or something like that. It was just that he was part of the act of the bodies being moved, I believe, within the car, that he's still facing that form of charge. Because we can see he meets up with his son's in the car, he drives off, his son goes the other way. So unless he circles around and follows him to the location, I mean, I guess he could have actually done something directly to the bodies there, but I don't believe that that's needed for these charges. Newsweek, I'm just trying to dig in and try to learn more about the suspects. Newsweek has been unable to verify social media accounts using their names. Police say Christopher has no previous criminal history, and that his father does have some criminal history. While the circumstances around the killings are not yet clear, Moscoso said that it appears to be a narcotics-related deal that went wrong. And he said that there might be additional charges. And they also noted that charges, if any, relating to the death of Savanah's unborn child have not yet been made. And that got me wondering about, could there be charges for the murder of Fabian in this case as well? And that led me to the Unborn Victims of Violence Act of 2004. This is a U.S. law that recognizes an embryo or fetus in utero as a legal victim if they are injured or killed during the commission of any over 60 listed federal crimes of violence. Now, it's kind of an important distinction there. The law applies only to certain offenses over which the U.S. government has jurisdiction, including certain crimes committed on federal properties, against certain federal officials and employees, and by members of the military. Federal criminal law does not apply to crimes prosecuted by individual U.S. states, although 38 states also recognize the fetus or unborn child as a crime victim. And the legislation contained the alternate title of Lacey and Connors Law. I'm sure those names sound familiar to many of you true crime fans out there. That is the California mother, Lacey Peterson, and her fetus, Connor Peterson. So there is some federal framework, doesn't quite fit in with this case based on what I'm seeing, although we did have federal help from them in terms of that phone being cracked somehow. I did find another article about a Texas woman being charged with murder of unborn child. So in the state of Texas, they do have state level laws that will allow for this as well. Under Texas law, a murder charge can be filed for the death of an unborn child. Texas is one of 29 states to allow for charges from the moment of conception until birth. And that's in an article as of 2020. So, will there be charges for Fabian at some point? We're really early on in this. I mean, these guys were literally arrested yesterday from when I'm shooting this. I think it's a possibility. But in some way, I do think that the elevation of this to capital murder charges is already sort of respecting the fact that Fabian was part of this equation. I think that's the differentiator that kind of took this from regular murder charges to capital murder. And we have a note here at CNN.com. Detectives would work with the Bexar County District Attorney's Office to determine if there will be any charges related to the unborn baby. The case had been listed as capital murder due to the death of an unborn child, said Lieutenant Michelle Ramos with the San Antonio Police. So one way or another, Fabian's being represented, but I do think that a charge in Fabian's name might be forthcoming here. So we might see an additional charge for Christopher on this. And that's where we wind up with an unbelievable loss, a lot of questions, a lot of hard feelings. I'm sure still a lot of blame happening within each of these families, maybe towards some of these families from the others. I don't know. I'd be holding some really hard feelings. I'd be asking some questions about, like, why was she out there? Why is she going out there? 11 o'clock on a night like that, she's due to have a baby in a couple days. I mean, she's already way overdue. Like, why did that happen in that way? This is just one of those cases that you look at and it almost feels like watching a car accident in slow motion or something. And it hasn't stopped tumbling. Even with this, okay, we've got the arrest of a 19-year-old that had no previous criminal record over a weed deal. What is this? What is happening? His father trying to help cover this up? There is a lot. There's a lot to look at here. But ultimately, what we do wind up with is two families trying to deal with this. One family dealing with back-to-back losses, but Matthew's family also dealing with losses as well. There are two GoFundMes that are open. One is open in Savanah and Fabian's honor to help with funeral costs. There's another one open for Matthew to help with funeral costs. As you can imagine, Savannah's is, I think it's about to hit the $20,000 it was looking for. Matthew's, I think, is coming up on about 5 or so. But there's other realities to consider when it comes to this. I really appreciate what was written up in Matthew's about his father, Gabriel, who's the main caretaker for their family, doesn't necessarily have family medical leave coverage. They're not sure if insurances that they had taken out or that Matthew had are going to apply, because now we have this homicide component that's wrapped up into it. So there's a lot of conditions going on for both of these families. I think it's only fair to support both of them. On behalf of myself and my amazing supporters at PayPal and Patreon, people that buy merchandise, people that buy us coffees and all that stuff, thank you guys so much. I'm going to make a donation to both of these. I think it's only the fair thing to do to try to help both of these families through this. And I hope that this video not only serves as an example of watching law enforcement do a good job, which we need to highlight these examples as well, but opens up conversations maybe for you in your interpersonal life, maybe you with certain family members that you have about situations like this. We can't lose the future in this way. And that's what happened here. And as upset as you might be at some component of Matthew's involvement or lifestyle choices he made, or Savannah's choices to be with someone in a lifestyle like that, Fabian certainly didn't make any decisions to contribute to this in any way. So it's just one of those situations. There's no way you can look at it, I think, and come away from it, at least for me personally, with a clear, concise, okay, this is the emotional bucket I could put that in, and that's that. This thing just hits on so many levels for me, and I hope it does for you guys as well. So please take care of your families. Thank you so much for taking this journey with me, for looking into this case, trying to understand it better. If there's significant developments, I mean, I think we're just going to see a trial around this, but it's probably going to be a couple years. But if there's any significant changes with these arrests or anything, I'll be sure to keep you guys updated here on the channel. And we'll see you again next week. On Wednesday, like I said, we'll have a video about the new schedule. Got a new little surprise in that we'll be talking to you guys about right here on the LordanArts channel.